on the need. We intuitively differentiate all the time. The question then becomes, can we competently discuss our differentiation and document in the way that the school wishes us to, as well as the way that would benefit us as we continue to differentiate. So that's really the issue. So that was all the cards, right? So let's take a look at this for a moment. This is in your folder. You noted very well that learning environment is not just the physical environment. It says here it's the way the classroom looks or feels, including the types of interactions that occur, the roles and relationships between and among teachers and students. So if you have one student working independently and another student working with you and another group working like at a table, then they could be doing the exact same thing, but there would be different learning environments. Or maybe they're not even doing the exact same thing, and you've got different learning environments and different products or processes going on. So we often, we can switch it up. We can just like at Sonic, you can get the Dr. Pepper with the vanilla and the Coke, right? Yeah. So there's lots of different ways. Content. This is the one that, for a while, it took me forever to figure out how to describe this to myself. Because sometimes when you say, oh, I want to differentiate content, it sounds like, don't do that. That's bad. You're bound to be hurting somebody. It just doesn't seem like you're supposed to. I always take a step back on that one. But then I have to remind myself that that's not the same thing as the standard, right? And I think in terms of like twins, if they were both in the same classroom and they went home and the mom's emptying the backpack and there's a bunch of reading materials in here about turtles and a bunch of reading materials in here about fish, we know that that could be the exact same standard. But to a lay person, they might be like, y'all are teaching my kids two different things, right? That kind of misunderstanding between content and standard is the same misunderstanding between content and standard that we sometimes get in our own mind, And we start to feel like, oh, I can't give her a different book to read, or I can't give her numbers 1 through 7 to practice, and her 1 through 20. But we do differentiate content. Another little example that happened at my house the other day is my son had a worksheet and it said, write a sentence that explains the cumulative property. Am I saying cumulative right? Like 6 plus 8, same thing as 8 plus 7? Commutative. Oh, edit that out. Okay, yeah. Commutative. See, I'm not smart enough 5th grader, evidently.
That's just 3rd grade.
Oh, okay. Great.
We're teaching that right now.
Yeah,
we are teaching that right now.
So he must be doing a review. Anyway, there was also a little star next to that, and the teacher had written on the paper, use decimals in your example. So that's like a content differentiation for him. Because in addition to just let's write it in a complete sentence what this property is, she also wanted him to practice with some decimals. So that was like a thing that he did that others may not have. Now, I'm not a teacher. Maybe she wrote that on all their papers, but I doubt it. You know what I mean? So if she were then documenting her differentiation, she could say that today I differentiated for Truman by content due to readiness. Now, she's not going to have like a special folder that says Truman and then like constantly be writing down everything she does for Truman and then turn around and get the other folder for Julie and like constantly, like nobody has time for that, right? However, as she's approached by her colleagues and her administrators who want her to discuss her differentiation, she has examples at the ready, right? For example, what have you already done today that was strategically a change because of a need?
I know.
Yay, what is it?
We read a passage and we were looking for a problem, solution, and evidence. For some of my kids, I had graphic organizer, I filled out the problem for them and to scaffold for them. So my kids that might have had more of a difficult problem really finding out what the actual problem was in the story. And they really did, but I did that for them.
Yay.
And I actually laid in bed last night and I reached over and I was thinking about the lesson I was going to do, and I'm a dork, but I normally don't do that. I reached over and got my phone, and I put those 6 people that I wanted to do that
Yay.
for, just based on their star reading and how they're doing, and I emailed it to myself, so I would remember. I'm a dork.
Perfect example of the work of the teacher. You know, this is just what we do.
Right.
If we explain it to our spouses, they just say they don't understand, right?
Right.
My husband always talks to me, don't go to all those acronyms, I just don't even get it.
Right.
But that's part of the professional life that y'all live, is constantly navigating what kids need. And so in that case, you are differentiating what because of what? What?
The content.
Yes, because of
The readiness.
readiness. Very good, yeah. Let's
Make a
look
note
at,
about it, put it in your
yeah,
notes.
very good.
Oh, I
Let's
do.
look at this chart.
Okay, so we can just write down.
Yeah.
I'll give you the graphic board downstairs.
Yeah. Look at this chart for a moment. This is the very simple 4x4. And ain't nobody got time to make this a new form in their life. I understand that. This is not a gift of a form like that needs to now take over your life. However, you can memorize this form, right? You can close your eyes right now and know what that form says. It says you've got the 4, I'm actually closing my eyes. You have like the 4 things that you strategically change on going down the row, and the column, and then across in the row you have the 4 reasons that compel you to change. So that chart is in your head. You know? If somebody said to you, why did you fill that in? Why do you fill that question in for those kids? You should be able to tell them, well, I changed X because of Y. And if you can answer that question, then you were consciously differentiating, right? Because of their readiness, I changed the content. Changed the content. Now, it's not our job to shield poor babies from things they don't like to do or that they can't do. However, you knew in that moment that the work that they had in front of them was so complex that they probably wouldn't get to one part of the work if they were stuck in another part of the work.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you strategically gave that content and differentiated in that way because of where they were in the learning process, you know? So you had a reason for doing that. When you're in the shower or when you're driving down the road and you think to yourself, man, I just tore up teaching today. I was awesome. I was the best differentiator in the world, right? We think that all the time. I think that all the time. You should be able to ask yourself, okay, Barbara, if you think you're so great, then what did you actually do today in the spelling that you thought was differentiation? Well, I had them working in partners, and it was strategic because the learning preference of this one child is, and if I can answer that question and chart this mentally, then yes, I just did. I differentiate. Now, one thing you could do with this chart, if you wanted to, and nobody has to, is you could print it out and just put it near wherever you do your instructional planning, because it's a reminder of the options. Again, it's like going to Sonic and looking at the menu and seeing the different ways that you can combine. If somebody followed you around with this kind of little chart and documented your differentiation for a week, oh, she did it this way, then she did it this way, then she did it that way, do you think there would be a lot of tally marks in the same block?
Probably.
In other words, do you have a favorite?
Yes.
Probably.
Yes.
Yeah, favorite.
Which you're most
Yeah.
comfortable with.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily the case that we have to have complete experience with all these kinds. But however, if you do, you're stretching yourself, right? You're stretching yourself. So you can remind yourself, gosh, I hardly ever differentiate learning environment because of readiness. I just seem to constantly do it with product. Some folks might look at this and say, you know what, I don't do a lot of product differentiation. Maybe I'll think of that. And, there are times you're the professional, you know what the kids need, you know what has happened before and what will happen after that moment. And so you can make all those choices. Just a reminder for our TEKS number 4. And we have the standard itself on this handout. And says the teacher challenges and supports each student's learning by providing appropriate content, developing skills which address individual learning differences. This is the one that has the standards stated for each of the 10 TEAC standards, and then also has some bulleted examples. Their first bulleted example says, differentiates the instructional content, process, product, and learning environment in order to meet individual developmental needs. So, I show you this just to confirm that the definition that we're working with right now does in fact align and is the language that's used in the TEACs. Okay? Do we have like 5 minutes left, or what do we have left?
We have 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Oh, good, okay. All right, so here is a suggested structure for instruction that we've probably been given like dozens of times. And if we were in college right now and we were having to write like a curriculum unit or whatever, we might actually put these in order and be all formal. But in real life, it's not formal like this. But there are times during the day when you're doing all of this. Like if I walked into your room and said, "What are you doing right this minute?" You might say, "Oh, I'm modeling for a math skill." I come back a little bit later. "What are you doing now?" "Oh, the kids are in a student work session for our social studies unit." I come back a few minutes later. "What are you doing now?" "I'm activating prior knowledge for our spelling." You know, it's like you're doing all these things along the way. Well, we've talked about how to differentiate, why to differentiate, what to differentiate. This is a sort of a when to differentiate. Because there are certain times in the day when it is more helpful for you to differentiate than others. What's an example of how you might differentiate the way that you activate prior knowledge?
You can maybe tap into their interests, you know.
Yeah, tell me what you mean.
I can't
Yeah.
explain it.
No, I get it.
Connect whatever you're learning with something
With
that
something
they're
they're interested in.
Right.
Yeah, and that may look
Personal.
different with different kids.
Right.
Exactly.
I was gonna say you could also do it with with the products, like you could say write down things that you know about this, or tell me things that you know about
Very
this.
good,
Or
yeah.
show me things that you know
Right.
about.
Or talk with a partner about what
Talk
you
to your
know.
partner about them.
See how complicated this is? Gets me excited about how complicated it is. Because what it means then is that you can be differentiating for content because of readiness during that by doing the following. You know? So that's an example. Very good. What if you have a student who you need to preview vocabulary with? You know? That is a differentiation of activating prior knowledge.
And I was thinking about when you gave her that card, you could have given, that could have been activating because you gave her that card early so she would know what, maybe you gave it to her earlier in the day so she would know what she needed to be looking for before you even got to it.
Yes, very good. And in kindergarten group this morning, we had a great example. A teacher said that she strategically took one of her very best speakers to the side and told her, "I want you to go first, and I want you to concentrate on the following things," so that the whole speaking, 30 minutes was going to go much better because it was going to start off correctly. You know what I mean? So she strategically, yeah, she was getting the student to model, yeah, and that experience of talking with the teacher and getting ready and going first, that didn't happen with other kids. So that was a moment of differentiation because of her readiness. What about the times when you are examining the standard, talking about essential questions, getting the big idea, revealing the whole point of everything? We could argue these points, but in general, what do you think?
What are you asking? Like how you would
Like, would you
differentiate?
find that a good time to differentiate?
I mean,
Maybe you need to use
You
different
just have to
wording.
make connections.
vocabulary.
Make connections.
Yeah,
make connections.
When you had them put it in kids' terms, when they were doing the
Yeah.
addition, she gave them the standard, the one that we read, and then